don't want to make this a monologue. In reading those transcripts, and I don't claim that every single word has been released, but I've read a lot of it, and there is, and some of it, has this salacious and entertaining kind of stuff, but when you get right down to it, interweaved through these transcripts is two things. It's education on what bond programs do, how they do it, either the right way or the wrong way. And it's a very, just for my own edification, because of other efforts, I'm going to actually go through those transcripts and highlight the sections and where it relates to what the charge of the committee is, and what it, from bond committee selection to the importance of having annual audits to how lease back and competitive selection is done. And just, our charge is oversight and telling the public how we're doing, both good and bad. And I feel that as a service to the public, that should have put it all in one place in an organized fashion. So, and I talk, anyway, that's my...
Let me make a recommendation. I don't know if that's being the form of a motion, but I know you're trying to get the transcripts, get them all in one place. And I recommend that we assign the review of the transcripts to our best practices committee, because I agree with you completely. The value of those transcripts at this point in time to this committee is the lessons learned. And again, talking about what we talked about earlier, we need to force down on our subcommittees some process here to move forward. Otherwise, we'll just be, reading transcripts all ourselves and making notes and coming back and complaining about them. I almost use the B word, but I wouldn't when Mrs. Jordan is here. But anyway,
I think. Go ahead. No, I think it's a great idea.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that if work has already been done by some of the individuals, I think that information can be transmitted to the best practices with their recommendations. But I cannot see the wisdom of having each one of us on the best practices committee reread all of this transcript when several members of the board have already done so or will have done so. I would think, if that's what the charge is, the best practices committee, and it's voted on by this bond oversight committee, I'll take that task on. But I don't want to have to do it if it's already been done and that information be passed on.
And then what's the purpose of having the subcommittees and having the structure to try to do this?
There's nothing to say we couldn't have a subcommittee that's specific and that deals specifically with this very oddball issue that kind of doesn't fall within any particular.
No, I can think of
let's cut to the chase. None of this matters if we don't get a check from the district to purchase those transcripts. So, this is all just a waste of time if we don't get all of them. There are 27 volumes, I believe. I think there are something in the neighborhood of, I have about 13 volumes, 14 volumes. So unless we're going to get them, we're not going to get to see them beyond what has been released. So, again, the question is, and as an aside, the court reporters own those transcripts. They're not in the public domain. You have to buy them from them. One of them's done about 60% of them. One of them's done about 40% of them. So it's around $2,200 to get those transcripts. So we can only review what has been out there. UT has released some. They're a little different in terms of what they can do, but we can work with what's out there in subcommittee. But if the district wouldn't give us any budget this year at all when we asked for it, I hardly see 4 of those board members tripping over themselves to write us a check for these documents. So,
well, I think that's a matter the public would appreciate knowing, I guess. Right?
Well, and I'm in favor of asking the question.
I think it's reasonable for this committee to ask for those transcripts. It's a legitimate cost for this committee, and a legitimate cost for the committee supposed to be funded by the district. We ought to ask for them, and the intent of asking for them is so that we can glean the lessons learned.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Carry that through.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Well, let's have some
Oh,
discussion.
it's more discussion.
Yeah, I think it's important, and Terry raised it, and I think what's important about it, I had mixed feelings about it when I first heard it, but the more I think about it, you know, those who don't read history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
And I think that, isn't that where you're going with this? I mean, let's make sure we understand what happened.
I agree completely, and that's exactly where I'm coming from.
Okay,
and,
good.
And I mean, if it's any interest, I actually filed a person of interest document with the courts, joining with the media in releasing it, because I thought it was important that we have it. So,
Again, with discussion, you know, one of the things that I think is important for the committee to understand, at least I think it from my perspective anyway, we have a narrow focus in which to operate. We don't need to criticize the board. We don't need to criticize the superintendent. We need to focus on what is done properly and what we, representing the people, feel that should be looked at more closely. To get into these other areas is just not what this committee should be about. But when something has happened in the past that is egregious in its conduct, I think we have a moral and a legal obligation in the representation of the public to be able to take a look at this and then just say, well, okay, this is what happened. Not on my watch, not ever again will it happen, you know, under these auspices. So, yeah, I think having seen that, and it's, look, we have great people in place, and I'm looking at three of them right there, over there, they're at Representative Administration. You know, you guys and ladies are doing a great job. But, you know, like I said once before, if you don't read history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I didn't make that up, somebody else wrote that more eloquent than I. But anyway, I would call for the question.
Is there any other, Bernardo, have any comments or?
Restate the motion, please.
I move that we submit the request for funding to acquire the full set of transcripts with the evidence backup, the exhibit backup. That's a separate thumb drive, but that one's free. And if they choose not to, we want the answer in writing from them. I mean, I didn't know that they didn't fund our request for on the budget. It just didn't happen. And quite frankly, they owe us a little more respect than that. Somebody does. And if it's the superintendent who has been given full sway to manage this group, then he owed it to us to come in and say, sorry boys, can't afford it because we're doing this or that or the other thing. But so, as part of this request, we want an answer back from them that is in writing. We want them on record.
And for the reasons that they don't want to do it. I mean, just saying we're not going to do it, you know, write you a check out for it. You know, if we're asking for legitimate funds for doing our job, and we have absolutely no funds provided by anybody from anywhere to do our job, except that we come and show up, and Kevin's happy enough to buy us some food for, you know, to keep us alive for a couple hours. But
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah. But yeah, no, you should.
I know, right, find some money, baby.
What's that? What did he say? What did he say? What did Terry say?
A little hyperbole.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. But I mean, at the end of the day, okay, you don't want to grant us funds, why not? When we're trying to do our job.
It's a legitimate expense. We should see those transcripts for the reasons we've discussed.
So, the motion is essentially that we submit, I think, this document as it's written, and we request the courtesy of a written response, one way or the other.
If in the negative to our request, the reasons why that response, that refusal of funds to purchase this information is not granted.
Or if they don't want to fund them up front, tell us how you're going to get the transcripts, the
Yeah, but I mean, you pose it in a when did you stop beating your wife question, and they're not able to do anything but comply. So, I think we have a first and a second.
I guess I screwed up, I should have let Stuart speak before. Do you want to speak on the
Well, I
motion?
just want to make one comment. You were talking earlier about the best practices, and you're going to talk more about that. And I think those transcripts relate to your best practices. Because some of you may or may not know, one of the former Bond Oversight Committee members was soliciting donations as well from contractors. So it kind of goes to that. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you. Call for the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, with Bernardo stepping out
Just before he voted.
just before he would have voted. But he is absent from the vote.